beautiful. The many, many ones that have preceded us have never been as lovely as this. But one is perfection. And think what we have to look forward to. To so much beauty and so much understanding. I am Olga Davis.
It's a perfectly wonderful party. It's a tremendous reunion. My name's Ray Green. Period.
This is a good idea, and I think it should be repeated next year. Lots of talk and lots of good friends, and I'm glad to be here. I've been here since 1950, and we bought cottages down at 30th Street, and in the storm we're all washed away, but we're glad to be here. I'm Priscilla Miner from 77th Street on the Gulf.
My husband and I have lived on the island for a number of years. We love it here, and we just wouldn't think of calling any other place our home. Mary Rockette.
Hello, folks. This is Russell Homer and his wife and his sister. And by the looks of things, it's going to be a humdinger of a party. Thank you.
Second time we've had a old-timers meeting in Anna Maria. Which brings up the logistical problem of who the hell is an old-timer. I was visiting my daughter in Germany this past summer, and the little cottages or villages are half a mile apart, and the man she rents from, he was raised about a mile from where he lived, and he moved in with his wife 50 years ago. He's still considered an outsider. In Anna Maria, if you've been here 6 weeks, you are pretty much of an old-timer. If you've been here 2 years, you're a native Floridian. So with that, we will start off, and most of the speakers will be talking from memory, which is probably the most fallible of all human ability. But because of that, it's also probably one of the most interesting. The first speaker is Mr. Frank Perkins. Where the hell is he? He is with the Manatee County Historical Association, and will probably start off telling you some factual truths about, or at least as far as history is concerned. After that, he'll probably get involved with himself, and that's a hard act to follow. You told me I had to make a 40-minute speech. Well, these notes I have here say that actually it says Palm Key Revisited, or Memories of Anna Maria. I'll speak to that. Now, are you going to talk or am I going to talk? I am the supervisor of the Manatee County Historical Records Library, which means that I'm the keeper of the records for Manatee County. And unfortunately, during the past week, I've been over in Daytona Beach. That sounds like fun, but I was taking an appraisal course to hopefully be a better property appraiser for you here in Manatee County. And so I didn't really get a chance to do the research that I should have. But I would indicate to you that the first inhabitants of Anna Maria Island were probably Indians, Aborigines. They probably stayed here as a matter of convenience because the fishing was good and the shell fishing was good. Gentlemen at my table this evening, not knowing that I was going to be up here, said that probably Hernando de Soto would be here to tell us how it was in the good old days. Well, I want to just correct that gentleman. Mr. DeSoto graduated in the class ahead of me, and as far as we can find out, he stopped off at Longboat, but he didn't make it to Anna Maria. Probably the first white men, if you will, or Caucasians who came to this island were Cuban fishermen. And this was common on the Gulf Coast of Florida. Cuban fishermen made little palm huts and stayed on the shore while they fished and dried fish for transport back to Cuba for commercial purposes. Later on, after the settling of Manatee County in the 1840s, there were a number of squatters who lived here, and I don't know if these people classify as squatters. Actually, their pictures are on the board back here, and you can get more history from that board than you can from me, believe me. But there are a couple of men pictured back there who are identified as Asa Goddard, who was a Confederate veteran, and a Mr. A.K. Goenlock. And then came the first homesteader, who, as most of you know, was named George Emerson Bean. As time went on, Mr. Bean found this to be a good place to settle. It wasn't just all sand and sea oats and sand spurs and rattlesnakes, although there was a lot of all. But as time went on, the pier was built. I always called it a dock. We knew it as Anna Maria Dock, but now it's a pier. I guess that's an upgrading. I don't know. At any rate, I didn't think really that on a gala occasion like this we want to talk too much about serious history, and Anna Maria has had some interesting history, and that gets us to something about the way I pronounce the name of our island. The story that I have, and it is subject to controversy, I'm sure, but the story that I have is that when the government surveyors were here doing the survey of these coastal islands, that there wasn't much of any place for them to stay, and the surveyors that were working on Palm Key, as it was known then, stayed with the mayor of Tampa. And he had two daughters. One was named Anna, and the other was named M-A-R-I-A, which in the English tradition is pronounced Maria. And when I was a young fellow, everybody called it Anna Maria. And then somebody came down from the north and decided these old rednecks down here didn't know how to pronounce anything, especially if it was Spanish, and they decided that it was Maria. And I submit to you that they are wrong, that it is Anna Maria. Just a few short years ago, when I was a young fellow, my family had a custom, thank you, ma'am. That wasn't a joke, but any laughter is welcome. Right. My family had a custom of staying out here during the summer months. It was hot enough in town, and the mosquitoes were almost as bad. But we usually rented a cottage or a house or something out here, and of course if you had something with more than 2 beds, then all the relatives came out to see you, the ones that you hadn't seen all year. And it's sort of like being down from the north. If you got 2 bedrooms, you turn into a motel. But seriously, these were very memorable and formative years in my life. One of the first places I remember, and some people might say that was typical of me, but one of the first places I remember was a place called Todd's. It used to be called the Silver Dollar. What is it now? The Wreck. And the Wreck is on the rocks, right? Well, okay. Well, we won't get into that because that's very political. But that was called Todd's in those days, and it was a real fascinating joke. In fact, that's the place I saw the first juke organ I ever saw in my life, or Nickelodeon, if you will. And Todd's was a wonderful place, and everybody who liked to dance came out from town where it wasn't moral to dance and danced at Todd's on Saturday night. There was the old bridge at Cortez. That was in the days when Cortez main industry was mullet. And speaking of mullet, I didn't see this, but my father told me, and this, well, he's a fairly truthful man, so I believed him. My father told me that he saw, when the mullet got ready to row out and leave, as they do every fall or every winter, that he saw mullet go under the Cortez Bridge from the top of the water clear to the bottom, as thick as they could be, the whole width of the bay, and it took that school of mullet 2 hours to pass under the bridge. 2 hours. We just don't have them like that anymore. We lived in a little cottage down at Braden Beach when I went to school out here. It was owned by a man named Roy Baden. Some people may remember that name. I certainly do. I was passing out cards for him when I was 3 years old. And you know what? He never forgot, never to this day. We had ice boxes, and it wasn't because we didn't have refrigeration out here, but every time it thundered, the power went off, and you couldn't depend on a refrigerator. I rode a bus to school. I rode a bus that you wouldn't believe. If we had it now, we'd have it in the museum. A lady named Mrs. Cobb drove the bus, and she came down to Braden Beach every day and picked us up down at the end, and we came up and picked up people all the way up. We had a little flag that we stuck out the window, and that told people to stop, not to pass the bus when we were stopped for students. We went to a little school that is now a part of the youth center at Anna Maria, in the city of Anna Maria. And that school had a principal whose name was Mrs. Phelps. Okay. Mrs. Phelps, she taught the higher grades, the 3rd, 4th, or I guess it was the 4th, 5th, and 6th, right. Okay, and Miss Sapp was my teacher, and once a week Miss Kathleen came down and we had music. We had a 2-room school. I think we had screens on the windows. We certainly had no air conditioning. We did not have a physical education instructor. We didn't have a lunchroom. We brought our lunch. But you know what? We didn't realize that we were deprived. And I even think we learned a little bit, Ms. Phelps. I could go on and tell you about scalloping in the bay and all of the wonderful things that we used to do, some of which we can't do anymore. And I would impress on you one thing in a serious vein, and that is this. I talked about the mullet going under the bridge, and I talked about the scallops and the clams and the good fishing and the good times. But little did we realize just those few years ago how fragile our paradise is. It's not gone, but it's almost gone. And I think we ought to be very cognizant of that and do something about it and save this wonderful place that I love so much.
He mentioned a lady that about 20 times in my life I've tried to do an article about Miss Kathleen. There's no way to write about her. She was a great lady. Now, another great lady. When I came here in '36, I rented a house on the bay, brand new house. Nobody had ever been in it. All we had was about a half a dozen lizards and a big black snake that was there. Beautiful view, right out over. They charged me $30 a month for it. I doubt that you can do it now. Mrs. Gill was my the lady I rented from. Where is she? She's about. Oh, there she is. She was also. Well, friends of mine met me in Braden and brought me out here. I didn't have a car. The first time I went into town, though, she drove the the school, not on the bus, there was a mail bus. And when you went in, you go back, and if you wanted something, you'd pay her a quarter and she'd bring it back for you.
How you do, ladies and gentlemen? So nice to see so many of you here tonight, and many of you I knew when you were small children. Say, Willis Wright, can you hear me over there in the corner? You told me I couldn't talk if you couldn't hear me. Oh, you're there. Thank you. That's my son-in-law. I want to tell you tonight about the time the bridge went out between Anna Maria and Longboat Key. It was March the 6th, 1932. I came to Anna Maria in 1924. I had two small children, a little baby 2 months old and a little girl 2 years old. And my husband got to be the deputy marshal in Anna Maria, and my brother-in-law was the town marshal. So my husband had to take over many places because my brother-in-law did have asthma, and a lot of places he couldn't go. So my husband, I always went with him if it was possible. This morning on March the 6th, 1932, we'd just gotten up out of bed. It was about 6:20 in the morning. We heard a terrible roar down toward Longboat Key. Well, we lived up near the IGA store in Anna Maria, and I said to my husband, wonder what that is? And then our house shook. It just shook back and forth like that. And I thought, oh my gosh, an earthquake. And he says, no, he said something else. He said, I don't feel it now. And I said, well, I felt tremors. And he said, that wasn't tremors, the house is shaking, something else has happened. So he said, let's go and find out. Well, being the deputy marshal, I jumped in the car with him, and we took the two children, and we headed down the island. We got to Cortez Beach. You know it as Bradenton Beach. Nothing had happened. We went on down to Westview, which is now known to you as Coquina Beach. And there, as we got to the end of the road, there was a wide open space between Anna Maria and Longboat Key, and over there to our left, what you know as P.D. Moore's Restaurant on Longboat Key, there was our bridge setting over there between P.D. Moore's Restaurant and that little island out in Sarasota Bay. Well, the water was halfway up the island, up the bridge, and I thought to myself, well, gee, that bridge looks just as though it's heading towards Sarasota. And I guess it was. But anyhow, my husband says, well, now we've just got the mail contract, and he said, I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to have a boat built so we can get the mail across to Longboat Key. We were to take over the mail route on July the 1st, 1932, right after this thing had happened. So I said to him while we were down there, I said, well, let's go over to Cortez and see what's happened over there, if anything. So we turned around, went back, and went over to Cortez, and here was Parents' grocery store, the cement blocks, and the groceries, and everything was scattered all over the road, the streets, and they were mashed, and it just, whatever it was, had struck this store, and it was flattened. So we traveled around Cortez a bit and looked around. Here was John Taylor's house. It had picked it right up off of its, it had about 2 or 3 foot pilings. You know what I mean, those little pilings that the house sits on. It had picked the house up right off of this and set it almost on the Cortez Road. And the 1,000-gallon rain tank was laying out in the backyard, and it was all mashed up, and you can imagine everybody in Cortez was out, and they were having a great time. Well, it seemed that the storm had reached in the home of Dewey Capo. It had taken Dewey Capo's suit, which was hanging on a hanger, had just looked as though it come back from the pressers. It took this suit and took it down to, you know, as Paradise Bay. It hung it in a palm tree on a palm frond, and there it was swinging in the breeze. Well, everyone got a kick out of that, and they said, all of their words was, it's a good thing Dewey wasn't in them clothes. Well, I often thought it was a good thing, too. So anyhow, my husband said, well, there's nothing we can do about things here. He said, let's go back and talk to Sam Cobb and see if we can get him to help us to build a boat. So away we went back to up the island, and Sam Cobb's place was right out near here. And we stopped and talked with Sam a while, and he said he'd help us to build a boat because we were supposed to start the mail run on July the 1st, and we'd have to have this boat ready. So my husband didn't know how to build a boat, so anyhow, Sam came up and helped get this boat ready. And so from there on, everything went fine. We got the boat ready, and it came the 1st of July, and we went on the mail route, and my husband said, well, you've got to go with me because I can't reach across there and put the mail in the boxes. So I said, well, that's fine. I said, I'll go with you. So every day for 3 weeks, I went with my husband and put the mail in the mailboxes. Well, then we paddled the boat across the Longboat Key because we couldn't afford to buy an outboard motor. So we paddled the boat off, and then we'd tie it up to a tree down there in Westview, and leave it all night and come back in the morning. It said U.S. mail on the side of it, so nobody seemed to bother, see. So anyhow, we've gone this 3 weeks, and all of a sudden we had a Model B station wagon, a 1932 Model B station wagon, brand new, and all of a sudden something happened to that car. Something happened to that car, and it wouldn't go, and it raised the dickens and was pounding and everything, so we took it in to the Ford Motor Company to find out what had happened. Well, they found that someone had put a quart of sanded shell in our oil in the motor, and they had drained it, and it had ruined our engine, and they were going to have to put a brand new engine in our new station wagon, which they did do. Well, the postmaster in town, that was Mr. Thrasher, he called Jim Farley in Washington, and he told Jim Farley that what had happened. Well, Jim Farley sent Inspector Boyd from Jacksonville over here to go over the route with us and see what he could find out. Apparently they didn't find out who did it, and I always figured I knew who did it, but I didn't see them do it. So anyhow, Inspector Boyd finally told me, he said, well, I'll go over the route with you alone. So he went over the route with me alone, and he says to me, Jim Farley says that you are to carry the mail for the next 4 years on this contract, on your husband's contract, and that you are to carry a gun with you at all times, and any time that you're handling the mail, and if anyone interferes with you in any way, you are to use it. Well, I was kind of scared of the gun, but I ended up with a .38 German Luger gun, if you know what that is. So I kept it on the seat beside me most of the time when I was carrying the mail. And when I wasn't carrying the mail, I locked it in the pocket of the car. But when I took the mail across the Longboat, why, I had to take the gun with me. So anyhow, I was always scared of that gun. And I made up my mind, if anybody held me up, well, I'd point it at them, but I don't think I'd shoot them. But I thought, well, maybe I just better give them the gun and let them shoot me. That's what I decided. Thank you very much for listening.
Let me ask you a question. When you came out from Bradenton, did you come out to Cortez Road and then park at the south end of Anna Maria, take a boat across the Longboat and the boat back? Is that the way you worked?
Yes, that's the way we worked it. That's the way it had to be done. We had to go over in the morning and get all the mail and bring it back. Had to go over by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, take the other mail over, and then come back. So this is the way we did twice a day. Thank you.
He spoke when he was speaking of I believe it was the first homesteader on the island, was George Beam. Now, Marion Coleman, Miss Coleman, I've known Miss Coleman ever since I got here. She only got here in 1930. But her uncle was this George Beam, who apparently there wouldn't be any island here if it wasn't for him. And where's Miss Coleman? Oh, there she is. Okay, Miss Coleman, if you...
Mother and I came to Anna Maria in 1930. We bought a little house, and it was on Magnolia Avenue, and I believe it was just about the south edge of the homestead. So my grandfather, Charles Everson Bean, homesteaded the north end of the island. And so we own the place, and I've lived there ever since. Of course, in the old days, there was lots more natural beauty than there is now. There was large patches of beautiful jungle and many birds and wildflowers. And of course, the only way to get over to the island was the bridge that has already been mentioned. And it was long and rickety, and it was the draw.
Get it a little closer.
There was operated by a draw, you know, that was kind of clumsy and operated by hand. It took quite a long time for a boat to pass through. And a few years later, after I had a car, I was waiting on the side and for a little boat to pass through. Mrs. Phelps said I could bring in some of my poems, and I wrote a little poem while I was waiting for the boat to pass. It was a sort of sailboat. It had I can see it in my mind's eye quite plainly. It had a pointed, it didn't have the pointed sail as most boats do. It had a square top sail, and there was a young man standing in the prow. And the boat went along, and I amused myself by writing this little poem. Jaunty little sailboat floating down the bay. Hurry up, you slow folk, we can't wait all day. Motors lined up by the draw, waiting just for you, as if there wasn't anything in all the world to do. There's that load of lumber for Billy's garagettes, candy for the corner store, bread and cigarettes. Matters of great moment awaiting all of us. Some are even trying to catch the morning bus. Saucy little sailboat, who do you think you are, that you should take precedence over a motor car? You who have no motor nor even any oar, lift your skirts and scurry through and bother us no more. A few years later, I wrote a poem about the spring in South Florida. It could easily have been called Spring in Anna Maria, but I wanted to submit it to the Women's Club poetry contest, so I called it Spring in South Florida. You say we do not have a springtime here, or that we always have it? Ah, you're wrong. The things most dear. Today I heard a Cardinals limpid song. A little bit about the Shad Street dump. The developers of Anna Maria made Shad Street wider than the other streets because there was going to be a trolley line from the city office down to the bayou, but the trolley never materialized. But the Shad Street was wide, and it's been changed to Crescent Drive now. But the old dump was down there, not so very far from what is now the firehouse. Oh, my dear old Shad Street dump, to my throat there comes a lump when I hear the big bulldozers snort and roar. Now your beauties all are flat, and I guess that is that, but I'll forget you never, never more. Oh, the Shad Street dump I knew, where the periwinkles grew, periwinkles lush and jaunty all the year. Hot or cold or wet or dry, they would never droop or die. How we call them, how they gave me courage and good cheer. In the fields of lupin in the spring, while the merry birds would sing, and the lantana's spicy fragrance all around. In the fall, the various weeds full of flowers and winged seeds made a riot of pure beauty seldom found. But I try to ease my sorrow as I hail a glad tomorrow when the city can pay off its bonded debt, for we've brought a goodly treasure, and the city now can measure just how much each patient bondholder should get. Bimini Bay will be okay. Lovely plans are on the way. Everything will surely be just grand. Boat canals and lovely places, but I'll miss the open spaces and little paths with cool tracks in the sands. I want to close with the one about the island with the magnet at its heart. That's been used on several programs, and the Women's Club has it in their yearbook for several years. There's an island in the Southland with a magnet at its heart, and it pulls you with a power that would tear your soul apart. Perhaps you found it paradise, or only passing fair, but wherever you may wander, you'll wish that you were there. The rustling palm trees beckon, and miles of silver sand, and thousand wonders of the deep and treasures of the land. So wherever you may wander, just relax your grasp and start, and be brought back to the island with the magnet at its heart. So we have been brought here by the magnet, and we're glad. We love it.
Introducing the next one here. He and I told lies to one another for a long time. It is certain truth. Now, Steve came here. He's a damn Yankee. He came here when he was about 3 years old. So since it doesn't take long, he and Dottie, who talked last year, she was less than 3 years old. But you really know this way around this island. Years ago, he and Dottie took me out scalloping about where the Anna Maria Bridge, the Manatee Avenue Bridge is now, or was no bridge. And, I caught my share of scallops, I reckon. You all you got to do is step on the damn things and reach down and pick them up. But then we were sitting on the sandbar out there cleaning them. Steve has 2 quarts cleaned, and then he helps Dottie finish off her second quart. I got a half a pint in case you include the last joint of my thumb and the pint of blood in there, which, but anyway, he knows his way around. Tell him I was talking more about Steve. Come on, Steve.
I see a lot of friends out there, but I want you to remember, my name is Hernando, and I came over here a long time ago. As a matter of fact, we got here to Cortez in 1919. We had the first houseboat on Anna Maria. We lived in it. It was a barge. We moved it over here in 1923. I went to that little school Frank was talking about, but that was before Miss Lena. My teacher then was Captain Mitch Davis's widow, Lillian Bell. And I'll tell you, that teacher was a wonderful help. She put me through 3 grades in 1 year. And from then on, it was nothing but roses. We had a Boy Scout troop here in 1932. It only lasted a year and a half because we didn't have leadership after that. But during that year and a half, the scoutmaster was from Cortez, O.L. Plaisted, no longer living. His son-in-law, brother-in-law, was named Francho, Clement Francho. He was, those were 2 energetic men, and they took a group of boys from Cortez, many of them who didn't have an awful lot of education, were fighting their way up just like the rest of us. And 4 boys from Anna Maria, Jack Whitehead, Johnny Whitehead, Dick Whitehead, and myself. And during that year and a half that scout troop was in effect, in operating, we won practically every award that the Sunnyland Council of Scouting had to offer. And Dick Whitehead and I were waiting. We had to wait over 2 months to get our Eagle badge. And I think at that time it called for a year in scouting or something like that. I know that Anna Maria has had scouting since then, but I doubt if they have had any troop who was as enthusiastic as we were, because we were more or less isolated. And here was a chance to work and learn, and we jumped at it. Now there's I thought maybe someone was holding a clock on me. Okay, let's see. Now I want to tell you about a little business that my sister and I engaged in. I think most of you know Dorothy Whitaker. Stand up, Dot. Let everybody see you. She's the one that tells all these tall tales, but most of them are true. But anyway, she doesn't tell this one very often because she is afraid somebody will hear about it. But a long, long time ago, Wyatt mentioned Miss Kathleen. She married eventually and was Mrs. Lee Barron Donovan. Her father was Captain Jones, who homesteaded down just about the public beach, the Manatee County public beach. And they had this old homestead in there on the bay, and he was an amateur horticulturist. He brought in plants from everywhere, but he did have some beautiful Cavendish bananas. And he was a little bit hard to see. He couldn't see very well, and he fumbled around a good bit. And he always had his home brew, which helped him fumble a little bit more sometimes. And he would cut these stalks of bananas and bring them over under his water tank and hang them there and cover them up with a sack so that they would get ripe. Well, there was mangroves all around their homestead, and we would sneak through the mangroves, and she would sit in the mangroves and whisper to me whether the coast was clear or not, and when I got the message, I would make a fast dash from the mangroves to underneath the water tank where I knew I was completely safe, and would manage to get a couple of handfuls of bananas and then rush back. Well, I'm sure Miss Kathleen knew what was happening to her bananas, and I know she wouldn't have done anything about it except maybe tell us about the wonders of being truthful and the wonders of being honest and that kind of thing, because she always had these little tips to offer you. But Dot was the instigator of the whole thing. She's always been that way. As a matter of fact, we were always out in the bay scalloping in the summertime, because that's the way we made all our spending money. There wasn't any work to do. And we had to have a few nickels to put in Pete Vigneault's slot machines up there at the Anna Maria Pavilion anyway, and an ice cream cone now and then. So we'd go out there in the bay, and we were pretty good scallopers. We knew where the scallops were. And we had our friend, I don't know, she talked last year here, and she might have told this story, but we knew where the scallops were, and we could also clean them, and we had a little boat with a slatted bottom out in the bay. We had anchored out there and always had live scallops in there, so that when the tide was wrong and was high in the middle of the day, and people wanted scallops, all they had to do was come by and say, well, we want a quart, we want 2 quarts, okay, give me 15 minutes, and we'd pull the boat in and open up a quart or 2 scallops, and here they are. They're still wiggling. But anyway, we had competition from some of the people from town, Frank Perkins' dad, and Jimmy Howes, who was the tax assessor at that time, the Harleys and people like that, they'd come out there and think they ought to get scarves too. Well, you know, they were getting right in our pack. So we had a system for that, though. We'd be scarfing, you know, and we'd be getting them, plenty of them, and then we'd see these interlopers coming along and go, okay. We'd spread out a little bit, and then she'd holler at me, "Hey, a great big scenery just went." And I'd say, "Yeah, I almost stepped on one myself. They're all over this place." Well, needless to say, the interlopers from town didn't come our way because they didn't want the stingeries. But Jimmy Howes was pretty smart. He'd bring out his political cronies with him, and he'd have his purple sack dragging it along behind him, and he wouldn't pay any attention to that because he knew what we were doing. He'd sneak over there to us and he'd say, "You doing any good?" And I'd have a sack full, and Doc would have a sack full, and he'd say, "Let me buy a couple hundred." Well, we'd very surreptitiously fill his bag, and he'd wander off, and then a little later on he'd be on shore with his cronies, and, "Well, did you do any good?" "No, I got a dozen, couple dozen, 4 or 5 dozen." "Well, look at here, I got a sack full." Well, he did that all the time. He was one of our best customers, and we didn't have to open them. Well, I think that's enough. Let's get on with the program. Thank you very much.
That was Stan Raymond.
Back to Miss Kathleen. I was living in her house once. She was a very devout Catholic. And this was on Christmas Eve, and Miss Kathleen wanted to go to Mass. They had no Catholic church on the island. She went out to get in her car to go to Mass, and this is typical of Miss Kathleen. The steering wheel came off in her hand. You know, so she came in and very unhappy, and I said, "Well, Miss Kathleen, I'll take you into church." And so we drove in. It was late getting there. There was a big crowd, just one church we couldn't get in. So I said, "Miss Kathleen, you sit here. I'll find a way." Now, I broke in a lot of places. It's the only time in my life I broke into a church. But I did go around, and I found out a way you could get in, and brought her in, and where she sat down back of the choir. After that, she called me Saint Watt, which just shows how goddamn wrong anybody can be. Now, we've taken off 30 minutes at this point for dancing, and then we'll have 4 more talks for you. Days on the island, and I truly believe that there's just one thing, honest to God, that is better now than it used to be. We don't have nearly the mosquitoes we used to have. It's hard, you know, you tell the truth about the way the mosquitoes used to be, and people don't believe you. But everything was double screened. When you got out of an automobile at night, you ran like hell to get in on the front door, switching yourself with a branch of Australian pine. Then you got inside and you sprayed one another to try and get rid of the mosquitoes. You made your own spray in those days. It was made out of kerosene, moth flakes, and bee brand insect powder. Kill those damn mosquitoes, all right. But then when you were in there on the little screen porch, then one person would jump inside and stand there and spray everybody else as they came in the house. At least we don't have those mosquitoes. Otherwise, I go back to the old time. Now, Jerry Sigeran, who used to distribute beer on the island, he was a very popular man. You get more beer from Jerry than anybody else. I don't know whether he's going to tell you about his beer. It was pretty good beer. But where is Jerry? Oh, there he is.
He forgot that besides everything else, double screens and what have you, the best thing was crankcase oil. And you would brush your screen with crankcase oil, and the sandflies, which were worse than mosquitoes, wouldn't come in. I came to this island in 1928 for the first time. That time I was dating my wife, who had started coming to the island in 1911. So if I was to go back with the stories that her father Some of you must remember Frank Escalante, who was really a pioneer here. I could tell you so much about the island. And hearing Steve Raymond and Marion Coleman, Chambers, the rest of them that preceded me here, it just brought back memories to me of the years, lovely years, wonderful years that I spent in this island. I thought that maybe not knowing what to talk about, because you can talk about so many things and then the time was limited, so I made notes and notes and notes, and I finally had to take them off and take them off and take them off and find out what I was going to talk about. So I came to the conclusion that in this time and age today, I thought that it would be a good idea to remind the people on this island of some of the people that did so much to contribute to what this island, in the large part, to what it is today. I will start off with, I know I'm going to miss a lot of names, and I beg forgiveness from those that I forget, but it's not possible to think of all the people and bring them up. But I'll start off with Anna Maria, the tip of the island. If that place is what it is today, it's because of some dedicated men who really gave of their time and money. And I want to talk about a period of, say, 45 to 52, which is 30-some odd years ago. You had, as a mayor, Paul Carlisle, a wonderful, wonderful man. He didn't need a chief of police, but I mean, as he was a tough guy and a perfect gentleman at the same time. Wonderful mayor for the city of Anna Maria. And I might add, a wonderful president of the Chamber of Commerce at that time. You had P.D. Wright, another mayor of Anna Maria, who was quite a statesman. He reminded me of a character on one of the comedies that Senator Claghorn, only he wasn't that rambunctious, but he was always a distinguished looking man, and he knew that beside the meetings. He was the mayor of Anna Maria. He was the first mayor of the Kiwanis Club, and he was the first mayor of the Chamber of Commerce. And to his credit, he did an outstanding job in all three of them. He gave a lot of his time to it. Let's take a look at my notes here. You had another man by the name of H.B. Miller, who became a controversial figure with Harry Baldy, who I thought the well of. I did also of H.B. Miller. H.B. Miller was another mayor of Anna Maria. And he served very, very much and worked very hard when the Chamber of Commerce got behind the bridges that we have on this island today. And you can credit this group of men that I'm talking about as, when I get through, the man who devoted so much to do these things on the island. I hate to bring this character up at this time, but I got to it before I get out of Anna Maria. And I think here's another guy that, if they ever have a what do you call it? Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame is a word. Now referring to Ted Tripp. And when I use the word character, I wasn't just kidding, I mean it.
You can't do that, Jerry. He's going to talk.
You don't want me to say anything about him?
Keep it clean.
An occasion came up when somebody wanted to buy a tract of land on Anna Maria, city of Anna Maria, and they offered $10,000 for it. And Ted decided that he didn't think that that was enough money for it. So he decided he was going to run for the mayor of Anna Maria, which he did. He had to go to a runoff, because there were 3 guys running, and he was elected, with the help of a lot of people who knew what the score was. And he said he ran on a platform that he would not, if he was elected, he wouldn't sell that property for less than what the city of Anna Maria owed. And at that time, it was over $50,000. Within 2 years, that property was sold, with a stipulation that besides the bonded indebtedness that Marion Coleman brought up a while ago, he made everything else that they owed had to be covered by the sale of that property. And I think that was a wonderful gesture, and a wonderful thing that he did. So I can't help but bring that up. Another man that's coming down the line was Hartley Blackman. We talked about a little schoolhouse at the tip of the island. He and his family. Now, if anybody loved the island more than he did, I haven't met him yet. We had to build a new schoolhouse on the island. Do something. The island was getting big, and yet it was quite small at that time. But that little schoolhouse wouldn't fix it. So the money was scarce, so they was going to try to enlarge the schoolhouse on the island. So the same bunch of men that I'm talking about, and then here's some more other men, got with him about the idea, because this group was quite active, got with him with the idea of let's get a good spot on the island. And we gave him the backing, and he went to the school board, and they approved where the present school is today. And there's another guy that there's a Hall of Fame for that schoolhouse somewhere. Hartley Blackman name should be there. He worked a lot for this island. You should, I think sometime, these people should be recognized, and that's the reason I got involved in this phase of the history of the island. As you go down the island, there's a gentleman that he was my neighbor. A guy who would fix your septic tank, fix your window, the roof, electrical, no matter what happened. He was a guy that did it. And he worked so hard in the fire department at Bradenton Beach. Quite a hard worker in the Kiwanis Club for many years. A very, very outstanding man who really was devoted to the island. I'm referring to good old Les Jackson. I can go down, further down, and Ellen and Jack Marshall, both of them, Ellen Marshall, how much she worked in trying to keep that paper going. She and Harriet Williams, when that paper was well, they couldn't keep it up, but they finally, they did a wonderful job, and Jack himself, he was always willing to run interference on a lot of the things that we tried to do on this island at that time. As you go down further down the island, you get into Bradenton Beach, and there was a Bernie Wagaman, which was a Paul Carlisle of Bradenton Beach. He wasn't afraid of nobody. He loved Bradenton Beach and he loved the island. And like most people at that time, we always believed that what was good for any part of the island was good for the whole island. He had down there Jack Jones, I think it was the first or second mayor, who worked very hard to incorporate Bradenton Beach. He was in a lot of things, particularly on this bridge project again, because the chamber at that time, as I said, had these men that, for the luck of this island, was a continuation. They stayed working together, and backed up all these projects. And we had the respect of the people across the bay. And we got the bridges done, got the public beach done with the help of this group of people. And I know that I got the Wide Blasting Game, which I got a blast for him before I get through. But there's one man also that didn't live on the island. And this man is another fellow that really belonged to the Hall of Fame, should be in the Hall of Fame. He lived in Bradenton by the name of Harry Land. Bradenton Beach particularly owes him, or I said doesn't know him, but Bradenton Beach should be very thankful to him, because all that Gulffront property from Great Street down, facing the Gulf, he got those people who own that property to deed it over to the county, which made it possible later for the state to build that beach that Bradenton Beach has got today. Some of you may not remember this, but he was really, and he was a spearhead for the bridges, for the public beach. So many things that that man did for this island. He was a man which I hope that, I always hope that some of his goodness would grab on to me, because he was such a wonderful man. And I owe so much to these people, because there was that time that I was a little bit active on the island, and to have worked with these group of men, and I feel that that was one area, one part of this island where I thought that we accomplished. I say we, I don't want to, these all these fellows together, I think that they should be recognized, I mean at least publicly here, or remind some of you people of what they really was accomplished here. One man before I take off, that was a most controversial figure for a few years, and that's, I'm referring to Harry Volley. I think that the man also loved the island very much. He was controversial, and I'm telling you, his enemies were not small, they were all big. That's what made him so big. I think that he was instrumental in helping the island, and I can't close without saying hello to him. And before I quit, I would like to, particularly Billy Martini and her mother, the first thing that I'm so proud to be here tonight, and you have no idea. And they must have worked very hard to have done such a successful job here. And I'll tell you. And before I, one more thing I want to say. Be careful with this guy, Wyatt Blasingame. In case you don't know it, he wrote many books, but one of them said that if you wind a screwball anywhere in the United States, he'll stop on Anna Maria Island. So if you think he's not calling you a screwball, this is part of his story. And thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
An accurate quote, but it's almost. But the best point of this is he's talking about Mr. Volley. Mr. Volley was very indignant about being called a screwball. And he said to one of the natives who was born here, "Don't you object to being called?" She said, "Hell no, I'm as crazy as anybody else on this island." Which is the way we judge. Now, your next speaker here, he mentioned Ted Tripp. I know Ted Tripp. Take him when you take him or leave him. I mean, he'll tell you a good story. You don't believe it, but he was the mayor of Anna Maria. We really got some screwy mayors in Anna Maria. I got another one coming up.
See, everybody looks so young. You talk about a screwball. Blasingame. Before we having dinner, he was out selling the pills. Who the hell could he sell the pills to over here? I'm sorry that Mayor Charlotte Long had left because she had wanted to make arrangements, and we're all invited down for free drinks at Bridge Street at 5 after 12 tonight. is going to have a new supply of birth control pills for everybody who's very active. Looking around, I don't think there's very many active vegan. Kind of looks a little sad. What can I say after this? I don't want to go back in all the history. I've been here for, thank you, 85,000 years. It's been wonderful. I think that perhaps one little story might be of interest. Stealing a little story from Bob and Connie Hoffman of Braden Beach. Many years ago, they had a house, and it was right across the road from the Cove Restaurant and Bar. And upstairs, they had a little thing going up there, sort of rentals by the hour. This was before TV. So Bob and Connie would be out there in their rocking chair, and they would check these people out. And the deal was, is you go into the bar, and you have a drink, and you've got Fruitsy with you, or whoever. And then you had to come out of the bar and then go up the side stairs, upstairs. So Bob and Connie used to sit there in their rocking chair and check them out. Connie had a blackboard. And geez, there's the mayor of Bradenton, you know, with somebody, and so on. And she also had a deal whereby length of time, you know, who was the first, how far up, because it's rental by the hour, I figured, you know, how much time it was going up and down. And they, unofficially, the fastest guy was the guy who was a member of the Braden Beach Fire Department. He only been up there 3 minutes, and the damn fire blew, which is blocked down. And he came down, and they didn't know just whether that was the record or not. But then they also had some young people who were very good. Then they also had some elderly people who went up there, and Connie quit at 3 o'clock. They're still up there. They had a longevity deal. I assumed that they figured, the hell with it, you know, let's turn over and go to sleep. My friend Bob Hathaway is not laughing, so I guess I'll get close to home. I guess the only thing that I have to say relative to the old-time deal is perhaps a very wonderful man whose name was Mr. Ludwig, and he had the home many years ago, on the Gulf of Mexico, which was right on the beach. Of course, the beach has now digressed into it, but at that time, he had off of what, Oak Avenue, I guess, White Avenue, Bob, Oak, and it was a little home, but it was up on stilts. And down from my house on, from the city pier was Dewey Adams, Anchorage, and we would go down at night, my wife and I would have a beer, or take the kids down there for one thing or another. And Mr. and Mrs. Ludwig were very, very fine people. She had an old, I guess you call it a moo-moo today at houseboat, and he had, he fished on the city pier just about every day, and I think he had the biggest hole in the seat of his pants of any of us, and we all did. And my golly, all of a sudden, I talked to Mr. Ludwig many times there, and what business you in? He said he was in the boat business, and that was the end of that. But my wife and I got an invitation this day to go out on his son's yacht. And we woke up in the morning, and we lived right on the water, and looked out there, and he could, the yacht was so big it could not get anywhere close to the city pier. It was way out there. Gosh damn, huh? And and that was what you got. So we went over there for the cocktails, and we had to go on the city pier, and there was 3 32-foot Chris Craft lifeboats with a sailor driving it and the sailor in the back, and this is the kind of operation it was. And there was a guy who had the biggest hole in the seat of his pants on the pier. And that's why I guess we all love the island, because we don't try to, we're not being pretentious or anything else. It's just really nice. What can I say?
One serious moment, I would like just to have you stand up, the 2 people who really brought the island out of the sea. Anna Rouse, who I understand was the first white child of any sex born on the island. She spoke last year. And Clarence Hall, I think you're both here. Just stand up and let everybody say hello. Now we have one more mayor. Where's Ernie? If there's anybody who doesn't need an introduction, it's Ernie. Everybody who's ever set foot on Anna Maria knows Ernie Cagney.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here, but everything has been told on my notes what I was going to say. So I don't know what else I can say, although all I want to say is that the first time I came to Anna Maria, believe it or not, was in about 1918 for about a half a day on an excursion boats from Tampa. Those excursion boats, one week they used to come to Anna Maria, and the following week went to Paso Grill. The reason I happened to come down here was I was discharged from the service on the 29th day of December 1945. First couple of days I was home, I was asked if I would help my brother-in-law to help a friend in the island, Amabile de la Torres and Geronimo, the 2 Tampa boys who were in business in Bradenton Beach, that were in the grocery business. So here's what happened. When we got there, I said, I wonder why they need all this help. He said, well, I cannot lift, I can't do nothing. He said, I have to go to the hospital, and there's only one man in the store to operate the store, and we need transportation to bring the groceries in, because at that time, even though the war was over, there was no transportation, not even wholesalers from town would deliver to the island. So I came in and we helped him 2 or 3 times a week for a week, about 10 days. And finally persuaded him, since he was sick, I said, why don't you go to Mayo or John Hopkins and see what's your problem is. So he decided to go, and a few days later, about a week later, he came back and he says, I'm in good shape. He said, they found my trouble, and I thought I had something worse than what they had told me. So first thing you know, he says, I want to retire. He says, how about buying my business? Well, you know, getting out of the service, you haven't got too much money to talk business. So we kept on, and he says, come on, you don't have to worry about it. So anyway, to make the conversation short, he says, look, if you're not interested in this business, in this end of the island, there's a liquor store owned by Mr. Phillips on Magnolia and Guff Drive. It's a very deserted place, and believe me, it was deserted. It was a very deserted place, but it's a good location, it's a good prospect. So my brother-in-law and I, we discussed it back and forth, and we finally went to see Mr. Phillips, and we agreed on the price. although we couldn't cut them down not even $50 out of the total amount. And we finally bought the place, but Mr. Phillips didn't have much of equipment. In fact, the total inventory, including the equipment, was $1,500. So just figure how much inventory he had, because he couldn't buy anything. So I started going around the wholesale houses in Tampa, meat packers, and told them that I had just got out of the service, if he could help me get started, since I had been in the service, and they all agreed except one. I won't mention the name. And, because they begged for the business. I still haven't bought in 35 years that I've been in business. I haven't bought the first penny from. We started accumulating a little margarine, a little bacon. We've got bacon in pounds, so in order to make it go further, we used to cut it in half. And we used to keep it in under the counter. As the customer asked for it, we'd give it to him. So first thing you know, we open up on the 13th day of April 1946. When we opened up, we worked all day, all night. We went to Tampa Market, get fresh produce and get going. The first day of business we sold $432. That's the most I've seen in weeks. Well, other than that, I want to go back to, we still had to bring our supplies from Tampa. So we didn't have the money to buy a truck. So we had an old Plymouth, 1938 Plymouth. We hitched a little trailer, even had to go 2 trips a day, but we made it that work. And until finally they started delivering and all of that. And believe it or not, whenever you came down that Cortez Bridge, the old Cortez Bridge, and those boards were flip-flopping, you didn't know whether the back end is going to go down or the front end is going to go down of the car. And oh, by the way, when we bought this property, we was a little store about 30 foot wide and about 50 foot deep. We also had a house which was on stilts. Well, during that time, Anna Maria, you can't build a duplex today under the zoning regulation. But at that time, it was available. The zoning was available, so in order to make out, because it was really 2 families, we built another apartment downstairs and still exists. It was originally a stilt, house on stilts. And I'm going to bring the subject up because some people don't like a home in a stilt, on a stilt. But Mr. Ludwig, his house is on stilts, is still there. And I don't know, it was old when I came down here, and that'd been 34, close to 35 years. And they're still there. To cut a little short because most of the items that I had made notation had been repeated before, so I don't think you want to.
It was, I think Jerry mentioned the fire department. I want to run one brief story on the fire department. Now we have an excellent fire department, really do. I've seen them put out fires and believe they was possible. But when I came here, the fire department consisted of an old truck in the back of the city hall on Pine Street. Didn't have any battery in the truck. so it wouldn't start it, and they had 2 or 3 garbage cans full of water and some brooms and crocus sacks to put out brush fire. And everybody, when the fire, you know, the word got around, might be take a half a day or so, the word get around, that there's a fire, you rush down, and then we all get back in the truck and push it off and jump on it. Fortunately, we didn't have any real bad fire, thank God. Now, to end this up, Billy Martini, who has really done everything for a couple of years here, and she has a friend, Genevieve Roque, who is, I understand, well, I remember the drugstore that she was in, was the first drugstore on there. I think you two are going to wind it up and make whatever decisions you have to make. Okay, I'm through.
I had this wild dream many years ago about having an island reunion. And tonight is one of the reasons why I had this idea. I had not seen this lady for about 25, 30 years. And because of tonight's reunion, I have seen her for the first time. She was my boss's wife. They had the first drugstore on the island. Maybe you will remember Ben and Jimmy Askew. And this is Ben Askew. Please say something.
I'm a native Floridian, and I was raised in Tampa. So I have spent practically all my life vacations at Bradenton Beach. Ben was also a native Floridian, but he went to school in Ortley, Alabama. But so he took the state board examination in Alabama. We came down on vacation one year. My father, E.C. Camp, started the first plumbing business here on the island. I'm sure a lot of you will remember. And he got his first lot by trading a car in Alexhurst for the car in 1936. In 1945, Dad decided to come down and start building. So when Ben got out of service, we, of course, had to come down the island. Jimmy was living with his family in Gainesville, so we stopped by and picked him up. And he hadn't been to the beach in a long time, and he got extremely sunburned. There was no drugstores open in Bradenton on Sunday, nothing at the beach, so Ben decided this was the place for a drugstore. So he went back to Alabama, Mobile, and gave his notice. I stayed here with Dad, and Dad and I started looking for a place. There was nothing on the island, no store. So Dad made arrangements with Mr. Pragle, owner of Bayview Tavern, and he furnished the land, material. Dad built the drugstore, labor-free, to give us a start. That was the beginning of Island Sundries. Later, Ben was able to take the Florida State Board examination, and we were able to change it to Island Pharmacy. It was across the street from the post office, and we had to start out with $2,000 inventory. Nobody had any money. He borrowed the money from his mother and father. And J.D. Miller is the father of Jackson D. Miller, attorney in town, was a salesman with McKesson Robbins. So in order to get a big inventory, we started out with just a quarter of a dozen of each item. when Ben finally took the state board examination and we were able to change to Island Pharmacy, we didn't even have a car. I had to use my father's. But the island residents, of course, were wonderful. They'd go to town to the doctor, bring their prescriptions back, and if we didn't have the prescription, I had to borrow Dad's car, and we'd go into Casper Sharp or Dr. Gainey, Brandon Gainey, and get the prescription, and I'd bring it back and deliver it. Later, as the drugstore grew, I went to work at the post office in order to be able to supplement our income. And as you can remember, the old post office, if I was hanging up clothes, I was eaten by mosquitoes. If I worked in the post office, I was covered with fleas. It was beautiful times, but a wonderful time. As you remember, Ditmas, Uncle Sam, used to come drive up the post office, and of course, he used to complain if anybody got his place, and he said, "Snowbirds, go home." But later, we were able to get a larger building across the street, and then Ben eventually opened the Island Sundries at Anna Maria, and eventually he moved from Bradenton Beach down to Holmes Beach, and later sold it to Mr. Webb. As far as I know, that's it. That's okay. She was scared to speak tonight, and she has done a terrific job. I think we do owe her a big hand, I'll tell you. Wonderful singer, I'll tell you. For me, anyhow, I know you all do. I'm going to make this short and sweet. When I came to the island, you think I'm going to make a speech, and I'm not. When I came to the island, I didn't have to wear glasses. Now, I've got several little notes right here. The first thing I want to say before I get carried on, I'd like for these people to stand because they made this evening besides all of you, because just having a committee doesn't make the evening. Oops, I can't see you. The committee cannot make the evening. It takes the people like you coming here to make the evening. So to you, I thank you very much for coming. The committee, would you please stand? Mr. Ken Salt, Mr. Jack Flanagan, Mr. Clyde and Lena Phelps, Dr. Ray Green, Andy Rasmussen. I'm leaving the last one because she doesn't really matter too much. It's just my mother, Mrs. Greenwell. I want to say one thing. She's been our treasurer and ticket supplier. So, Mother, please stand so they can see you. Right now she's tired. I have got another dream also, besides the Island Reunion, which has been going on for 2 years now. We have pictures of the old days. Pictures tell a lot, I know. But what I would like, I hope, and I'd like for all of you to think about this. You all have memories of the island. And I'd like, within the next year or so, to get your memories on tape. Ann Riles, you gave a terrific speech last year. We've got that on tape. I know you have a lot more that you remember that you couldn't say in 5 minutes last year. I know there are so many of you. Steve Raymond, well, I'm not even going to mention names because I'm going to miss a lot, I know. But I'd like to get those memories on tape. How do you feel about it? You know, we could have a library of memories. The new people who are coming, they're going to say, how did this island develop? Somebody must have been crazy. Look at our streets, for one thing. All right, so let's let them know what the crazy people did in those days.
the fun things we used to do, how the island developed. If you like this idea, on the back of your little place setting, you have, I hope still, put on the back of that, if you would like to have your memoirs taped. We'll get to you sometime, I guarantee you. Also, on the back of these, that's so important, will you please write down any comments, criticisms, suggestions that you might have for any future dinners we may have. Which brings me up to the next thing. Would you like another dinner next year? All right. I hear those for. How about those against?